Welcome to Paint Along at the Plainfield-Guilford Township Public Library. So in this program, we're going to invite you to paint along. So you'll need a list of materials. You can find those in our previous video of materials list. At any time in this video, you can pause to catch up or paint ahead, whatever you need to do. The first part of planning any painting is, again, designing the composition. And what we want to do is we want to focus on leading your eye around the painting. So I've chosen today a scene from a meadow. I'm going to invite you right here to take a screenshot. So as we talk about the composition, we want to lead your eye through the painting. And in this particular one, we're going to develop what's called an S-shape composition. Sometimes it's called a zigzag composition. And what that basically does is we are arranging shapes to lead your eye through the painting. And this particular scene has a very natural zigzag composition. You'll notice that there are flowers, wildflowers here in the foreground that form much like just a slanted line here, which brings you up to this position and this line. And then the eye goes back along here. There's another plane of trees in this direction, which takes you along these trees and then up into the sky. There's a very faint blue sky there. So again, it's very much a zigzag, or sometimes called an S composition. We're going to focus on doing that and developing that in this painting. The palette that I'm using is just a simple frame and glass that I picked up at Goodwill for $2. So it makes a very nice palette. So I'm creating just a very mid-tone gray using some black and white. So first of all, we want to find our horizon line. And as you can see, the horizon line is right back here, just a little bit above the halfway point. It's going to be right behind these trees. You think of it right in here. That's our horizon. So I want that to be about a third of the way. So if I measure about a third of the way, you can see just right through there. That's my horizon. I'm putting more emphasis on the foreground because what I loved about this meadow was the wildflowers that were in the foreground. So we're going to emphasize that. Now, as I'm looking at the various planes that we have, right behind this horizon line, we did have a plane of trees. And there were a couple of places where the field behind there just peeks through. I want to keep that. And then behind that, here's the horizon line again. There was just a line of trees in the background. We've got this very large mass of trees that go off the canvas, so I'm just going to indicate that, and then here, they go in here, and then right here we've got another one, and then down, and then off in this direction. There's a nice slant here. I like that curve. It's kind of a slope. Here I've got all of those meadow flowers moving in this direction. Coming back in here with all of these shrubs that are back in here. All right, that's where we're going to begin. So now we've indicated the various design elements of this painting. So at this point, I see a line right here that I'm missing. So at this point, we are ready to start blocking in the shapes. And what I mean by that is we are blocking in the basic color of each of these shapes. I'm going to begin in the back, or I'm going to be working forward or down. So we're going to begin with the sky. And with the sky, I want to just have a little bit of some white, add a little blue to it. I've still got a little gray in my brush, and that's good because this is actually kind of a hazy gray day. So, but again, I'm just blocking in the basic color. Just want to kind of pull that in. Now, the trees in the background have a very blue cast to them. They're very hazy looking. So I'm going to just pull in a little bit of yellow and blue to make green. Let's begin with that. Yellow and blue make green. Now the darker blue, the more blue I add to it, the more of an evergreen, a deep shade it's going to be. A little right there is about what I want. And I'm going to just pull that over into this really pale blue because as you can see, it's very far away, very hazy looking. So this is about the tone that I'm looking for. Evergreen, by getting, again on our color wheel, to get green, you're going to add yellow and blue, and you'll get any range of greens. I added a lot of blue, so that's going to take it more like an evergreen. And now I'm pulling it down into that sky color. Okay, so let's block that in. These are the farthest away, the trees that are kind of way back in the background. As they get a little bit closer, they're a little more defined and a little more green. So again, I'm going to jump right back over, wiping some of that white out. Let's come over here and pull into some of that. I'm even going to pull a little red into that just to warm it up a bit. Now, in the foreground, you can see the light is actually coming from this direction, it looks like, because in the front of the trees, you're seeing a much deeper blue. So to indicate that, I'm going to just pull some more of that blue into this. Okay, and I'm just going to put some of that in the front, certainly along the horizon line. So you can see the field now. That's the next part that I'm doing. And with this green, I'm going to add a good amount of white to it because I want it to be more of a sage. Looks to me it needs a little more yellow. That's about what I'm looking for, actually. Added a little yellow to it, and look at how close that is. Okay, so that's the next field that I'm doing. I'm doing that plane that is right here. So you can see, just going to block in the color. It's almost an arrow. There's a little hit right up here that I want to make sure that we get a little bit right in there. I wanted to indicate that that was right behind it. I'll come back later and work on that. The next plane that I'm working on are these shrubs. They're lighter in value. They have more yellow and more warmth in them. And I want to define them very well against that light green. So I'm going to go back into this green. I'm going to add a little more yellow and a tiny bit of red. That's way too much. So adding some red. And you can see how that took that in the direction of more of an olive color. That's going to be very, very different than what we're seeing here in this background field. So just going to kind of shape that in, just indicate that little shape. And there are others over on this side. We want to have a little balance. Okay. All right then. So this area, I want to add a little bit of yellow, something that's a little more bright to that. Adding a little more yellow. I want to just kind of pull that kind of yellow. That's way too mustardy. Let's add a little white to that. That's more like it. You can see. There we are. Put some of that here. We'll come back to that shape of the trees. Right now I really just want to get this field blocked in. So I'm going to come here. I'm seeing some areas that are darker here and right in here. So I think I want to lay that in before I put that bright yellow on top. To get that, I'm going to go back to this blue. And I'm going to indicate that that's here. It's kind of cool because it's in shadow and then down in this area. Sometimes I like to block in the corners in a cooler color, and that kind of helps lead your eye into the painting, which I'm going to do right here. Let's take that cool green and bring it down into this corner. And even into the foreground a little bit. All right, now we're going to go over the top of that with this lighter green. All right, again, just blocking in the shapes. This has a lot of blue in it, so I'm going to come in now with kind of this sage green that I had, pulling some of that blue back into it. And we'll come in later and do some more of that. We'll work on that a bit. Right now, just blocking in some shapes, blocking in color. This needed to be this brighter color. There we are. What we're looking for here is that zigzag, which we have here and here and here and here and going on up. All right, so now let's work on the trees. So I want to show you a couple of things. When we're doing trees, we want to, first and foremost, we want to think of them as shapes. So as you can see, there are some very dark areas of this tree. I see a shape here that is dark, right here, and it goes up into here. And you can actually see this if you have a little trouble seeing it. If you squint your eyes just a little bit, sometimes that will help you to block in and to see some of these darker shapes. Okay, the darkest darks are here. I'm just going to kind of plug those in. All of them, that area is not dark, but some of it is very dark. kind of varies between some really dark greens. But you can see it makes some interesting abstract shapes. All right, and there's some more here. And there's some darks in this area right here. And then we have more here and some in here. So we'll go back in and put some of those in. So the green, as you can see, is still a rather cool green, although it does have some hits of light. So again, a cool green means it's going to have a little more blue. To that, and just a hit of white. A little more yellow. That's more of what I want. It's kind of more of a Kelly green, really. Going to add a little bit more blue to that and give us some cool areas. Now, as I'm looking at these areas that are dark, they're also cool. So I'm just going to kind of bring some of those in. Now let's go in and make some darker darks. I'm mixing some blue with the green. I'm going to pull a little black into it just to really, and a little red, just to take it in more of a purple, really deep tone. I don't know if you can see that, but I pulled in a little bit of red into this blue. I'm pulling in a little bit of yellow. And you can see how much darker and deeper that value is. So we're going to focus on where these darker areas are. I really didn't need to add much black. I thought I would add some to it, but it doesn't need it. Honestly, too much black can really cause a painting to go very flat, and that's not something you want. Okay, looks like we're repeating some of those spaces. All right then, so we've got some darker areas here, got a few right in here, got purple, kind of deep of purple value, got a couple back in this area. So now we've blocked in some shape. So now at this point, I'm using my small brush and I'm going to start to work on details. So again, we're going to work back to front. We've got all of our shapes blocked in. We've got a design element that's going here. So I'm going to go into the sky. We're going to lighten that up a bit. I've got a lot of white here. I'm going to pull in some blue. Can pull in some other colors as well. Sometimes I just like to have a little bit more color in the sky. So I've got some pink here. I'm gonna pull some of that in. I've got some, let's see, I'm gonna create a little bit of a peach color that kind of similar to what we had in the background. take some of that white to that blue. And here along the tree line, pulling some of that in. There was just a slight lift here in white, which I may just pull into that, pull a little more of that white in there. Using a little bit of a dry brush here, just to barely kind of pull some of that white down over it, just to soften it a bit. Okay, that's good for the moment. Leave that as it is. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to kind of cut some areas into this tree just so that it kind of has a little bit of space, a little bit of air in it. I want it to kind of have the feeling that a bird could fly in there if it wanted to do. You can see, there we are. Just got some little sky holes here and there. All right then. So now I'm going to go back into the background here, add a little definition, I think, on this field in the background. I'm really kind of happy with the colors that I've got going there with those trees that are in the background. So let's start on that field. Well, you can see what I just did to it. So I want to go a little bit lighter, more of a sage. So to get that, I'm going to make green, yellow and blue, make green. I want it to be kind of a bluish green. Okay, then I'm going to add a chunk of white to it. Okay. And just kind of in the way back in here. And then right back in here, I wanted to have a little hit. All right then, so I'm going to add a little more of a yellow tone now to lighten up the area where the light is kind of hitting some of these. So what do I want to do here? I had an olive green. Remember, I added red to it, and that took it more in an olive direction. Little blue, little yellow to make green. Then when I add red to it, it takes it more like an olive. So again, I want to have some highlights on top of that. So I'm going to add tiniest bit of yellow and a little of this sage. See how much lighter that is in value. That. Just going to hit edges, the edges here, edges. Go in up here and add some where the light, again, the light is hitting up here, coming from this direction, here, here. Oops, got into the wrong color there. And that's okay if you do. I mean, trees are very forgiving in that regard. Adding a little more light here. In fact, I'll break that up, that line up a little bit. Need more of that sage, or actually that olive, so blue and yellow. Add a tiny bit of red to take it to an olive color. So just gonna come in here. I think I wanna go with a little bit lighter value. I can't really see that very well. By adding a little white and pulling it into that sage, this is what I'm getting. See how that, it just shows up a little bit better. See how you get a little more pop there. Okay, now I want something really cool right now. Again, blue with a little yellow. And you notice I'm not wiping my brush off in between. I'm kind of letting that color mix. So let's take some of that cool color now and kind of soften that black, that really dark edge that we have here. Okay, I'm happy with those trees. Let's come over here. I'm going to add some of that sage kind of in this area where the light is just kind of hitting. Again, unity and bringing what I had over here a little bit. Now we're ready to start to get into the field, which is great fun. So the field, I want to go lighter. Again, I want to go a little bit lighter than what I'm actually seeing in my painting here. So I'm going to take all of these wonderful greens that I just used. I'm going to add some yellow to it. And just the tiniest bit of white. All right, those are some nice greens. All right, so here we are. I'm just gonna hit kind of here. And I'm just kind of mushing it with this little detail brush. Got that. Got some back in here. I'm going to add a little yellow here and there and some other, I want those greens to just vary a little bit. And I want some of that background peeking through. Just pulling in whatever paint I've got on my palette in this green area. Remember, I had some dark colors in the foreground or in the corners here, so I'm going to go a little darker. I need a little more of that green, kind of using it all up. So I'm just, again, mixing yellow and blue to get green, and I pulled just the tiniest bit of red into it. And I pull that down into here. I can add some white. I can add some blue. I can have any of those reds, I can kind of go in that direction up here. And of course yellow. So now I've got a variety of greens to kind of pull from over in this corner. Got a lot of white on there. I didn't really want that there yet. So I'm going to wipe that off my brush, go back into those greens and just kind of work into it. It's kind of a sage that I don't really need it there. I don't hate it. It's just, I'm going to be much more controlled, I think, with some of the whites here in a minute when I do some of these meadow flowers. So I'm saving that to the end because quite honestly it's my favorite part. All right, so we've got the base down for our meadow. Now these These meadow flowers are very pink, and there's a lot of blue chicory. So I'm going to mix up a really beautiful periwinkle blue. And to get that, I'm going to pull some blue down in here and a little bit of red to make kind of a lavender. I'm going to pull a whole lot of white into it. Now you can see that's very lavender, but that's going to be a great color for our clover. I'm going to go more in the direction of pink for that. So we can pull some pink. Now when you do flowers in a meadow, you don't want to really do individual flowers if they're far away like that. So what I'm going to do is just kind of, and too much white on my brush, so I'm going to wipe that off and go into that again, into an area that's pretty well mixed. So what I want to do is just kind of indicate some lines where that clover is. Okay. You can also do some more of it here and there, just here. As it gets closer to you, you're going to see more of these individual bits of clover. But when it's far away like that, you're going to mainly see just drifts that are going to look more like lines. Okay. Now that chicory is a periwinkle blue. So we're going to take that lavender that we made and we're going to add more blue to it and pull some more white into it till you get this really beautiful, beautiful periwinkle blue. Just about that. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to do some little drifts here and there. And again, for unity, I'm going to kind of bring it around in a couple of places on my painting. Okay. There are a few places that we had some white. I'm going to, again, just kind of gray that down with that periwinkle. Just tone it a little bit. Actually, I might take it into a little green. I don't want it stark white, but I think a little white here and there is going to be nice. Again, wildflowers. Again, they're going to look like drifts. I don't know if it's Queen Anne's lace or what it is, but there we are. So I'm pretty close to being ready with this, but now I really kind of think I want to make some of these greens pop a little bit more. So to do that, I'm going to make, again, yellow and blue make green. I want a really yellow green, and I want a whole lot of white in it. I think I want to even take a little more yellow. This is kind of what I'm looking for right here, this really very chartreuse. And just right in here, just kind of right in this area. Just going to hit that a little bit. And then there's a little bit more. Remember, it was going off kind of into this direction. I could probably hit these trees up here with this a little bit. I'm going to take my liner brush, that really dark purple, deep color that I had earlier. Just going to pull some of that in, and I'm just going to kind of bring some shrubs, some brushes, little brushwork in here to kind of indicate tree limbs. You can do the same thing over here where we have this meadow. There are going to be probably some wildflowers and shrubs and trees coming up. Don't need a lot, but I think a little bit really kind of get a little loose with that brush. Kick a couple of little specks in there. It adds some interest, I think, to your eye. And it really kind of makes that yellow pop too, having some of those little dark spots here and there. Kind of plays with your eye. There. Okay, you know, I'm going to call that done. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you come back another time and paint along.